Hello, everyone, and welcome to this supplementary video to our D-Day debrief, which should have just been posted after this, or before this, rather. This is a little analysis of a couple instances from the game, a few extra thoughts that we couldn't fit into the debrief or didn't want to. We're going to go through, I think Sean has a couple case studies that he wants to go through of some actions, either hypothetical or what actually happened during the game. And some of us also just have some extra thoughts that we'd like to add. So I'll keep this brief, or at least try to, and let's just move straight on to Sean here, who has a couple notes he'd like to add. Yeah, so Sean, take it away.
Yeah, so I mentioned in the debrief that I thought uh, this movement from 9th Brigade was very good. I didn't really have time to explain why, but it was I felt it was pretty excellent, and there are a couple of principles as to why. Okay, so you can see the allies here are in two columns. So you have So if they meet enemies on this hill, they can find them, advance in column, and if they manage, say it's only one company here, if they manage to beat them back, they don't have to deploy out a column, and they can keep marching, essentially keeping up the pace. And that's one of those things you have to balance is between getting the most effective tactical position and you know taking your objective in a reasonable amount of time, because with these 8 companies here you could probably slowly encircle this hill, and then capture all 4 German companies. But if that takes 4 hours, um, and you're supposed to be over here in 4 hours, then that's not going to work. Uh, this is why I think this is so brilliant. So if they find an enemy battalion here, they can advance, and then this formation can very easily shuffle, uh, and you now have more frontage than the Germans. Um, and you still have a reserve, so you can very easily drive them off of this position. Um, uh, and then, as some of you may noticed, these pieces are different because these are demonstration. There were not actually Germans here in the game. Uh, so, but part of what makes this so good is that it's a tactically effective formation that also, uh, when he comes upon this hill and he sees that there are no Germans here, he can just keep marching because he's in his columns, so he hasn't moved out of them. And that's has to do with how he spaced these, so that one could hit it if there was something there.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that was a problem with a lot of the commanders in our game. That in this community, we have a lot of Napoleonic Civil War era games, and it's an entirely different tactical environment than World War II. And so it's nice to see when players have strategies that account for the differences between the two time periods. So, very interesting observation.
Yeah. And then that neatly dovetails into my next thing, which, there we go. If it will load. And this is something that this is like, how do you combine your arms? So we often in a lot of World War II literature, you're or just generally, you talk about combined arms a lot. But what does that actually mean? So here, the Germans are trying to drive this force from outside Pierce, and they have elements of 21st Panzer, both infantry and armor. Um, However, they do not combine their arms well. Um, so what happens is that the infantry launches an attack over here, and then the tank commander, uh, uh, who's a different player than the infantry commander, um, orders some of his tanks to go over here, and then more to go over here and provide fire support. Now, this is a problem because this is I don't remember what the around what size German tank companies are, but this is like probably at least 50 tanks uh, advancing on infantry um, with no infantry of their own. They do have these to provide fire support, but the problem is that these it's very difficult to see out of a tank, like to tell what's going on. Um, so what's happening here is that these British companies, there are small groups of men with Piats hiding behind, in depressions and that kind of stuff, and they inflict heavy damage on these German tanks, and they drive them back. At least for now. The Germans roll better later, but yeah, that would kind of be a failure. I think informed partially by players, by a mistake in terms of like organization, because I feel like the British, they handled this very well, and I think they kind of intuited a solution that was actually used historically. So over here in Marginy, you have the British Seventh Armored, um, and so you can see like some of these tanks, like these ones right here are from Fifth Royal Tank Regiment, which are all part of all of the tanks here are part of 22nd Armored Brigade. But what the British did is that they split some of the motorized infantry from 131st Brigade and gave it to 22nd Armored. And then they gave some of the tanks of 22nd Armored to the 131st Infantry. This is very similar to the American Combat Command System, which is kind of like a German Kampfgruppe, but it was an actual, like, it was on the unit TOE rather than just being task organized. And if a player has like tanks directly under their command, it changes how they play versus I have to always be able to contact this player, the player with the tanks. We have to coordinate it.
Indeed, and that's another one of those things that makes World War II very unique and can make or break a combat formation. Certainly, combining your infantry with your armor is something that the 7th Armored Division here did very well in the game. I will take some credit for that. I kind of planted some of those seeds in some of the Allied players, and I may not have talked to 21st Panzer about it as much. So that might be partly my doing. So, oops. But, yeah, definitely very interesting to see the contrast here and how the Germans are using armor around Perrières, and at the same time using, or the British are doing the exact opposite, using combined arms down by Marigny in the same general area in the same half-hour turn. So very interesting to see.
Yeah, and also kind of how the units under your command, how they're organized, how it affects your decision making.
Indeed. Now, if that is all that you've got, Sean, I'll
Yeah.
open the floor to either Tunis or Portals if you guys have any commentary either on this or just about anything else. If we can find a save for you if you want.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I think most of what I had to say we said in the other video we did. But I do agree with what Sean was saying about combined arms. It was good.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I think let's just wrap this up with a little conversation here because we're at 11 minutes. We can drag this out a little bit longer. I want to have a little debate, if you will, about the overall outcome of the game. So we announced, right, that the Allies are the winners. It's just the question of to what degree. And I guess, right, the big what-if question is what do we think, what do we speculate is going to happen in the days ahead, and will it favor the Allies, will it favor the Axis, right? So one of the concerns I brought up in the debrief was that the Allied lines are stretched extremely thin, and that the Germans might be able to exploit that. But of course, some of you brought up other points that might mitigate that. I'm just wondering what y'all's thoughts are on where the game goes from here if we were to play it out longer, which of course is not an option. This took way too long already. But I wanted to know what you guys thought of that.
I'm gonna pop up another save to illustrate kind of a small thing, at least in terms of map space, but something that I think is pretty important in evaluating it. Because before the Germans can really counterattack, they have to contain the Allies. And where do you think that's going to happen? At least in the St. Lo sector.
I would say probably behind the Veer River, right? They're gonna,
that's the
good blocking
logical
position.
place to do it. You would have your infantry come in overnight as fast as they can, and you have 21st Panzer here. The problem is you have a bunch of little American paratrooper units all over here that have managed to secure crossings. So what can happen? The Allies, in like their lines, they had maneuvers similar to this drawn up. So you take 7th Armored, and you'd move it out of the line here, and you'd put another division in here and have it oppose the Germans here. And then you'd take 7th Armored, you'd take these crossings, and then you'd bypass the line along this river. So where do you think the next German line would be?
Well, I think that the Germans have a reasonable opportunity to actually counterattack those positions even in the evening, as their Kampfgruppen start establishing positions along the Veer River. And these are isolated companies of paratroopers, so yeah, it'll be annoying, it'll be a distraction, but I don't think that it's something that the Germans couldn't necessarily oppose and deal with over the night.
That's one of the things that I didn't get a chance because I never got a St. Lo save, but I don't know how far the German infantry. Uh, I didn't get a con save, so I don't know how far the German infantry is away. I don't know if there will be enough time for them before, like, I don't know, different other British units
Hello?
reinforce this position.
Hello?
Hugs, get out of here.
What?
Get out of here. We're recording a freaking analysis, bro. Get the fuck out of here.
Oh, my bad.
Awesome.
What the heck was that? Surprise appearance from everybody's favorite Corps commander. Oh, boy.
Test game overall commander.
Yeah. What a disaster that was. Let's not
I
talk
do
about
think,
that.
like, in our game, I mean, there have been some Germans that have been surrounded, a few regiments here and there, but it hasn't been catastrophic for them.
At least
I mean,
in
this is
my sector,
recoverable.
pretty bad. Yeah.
I mean, there was what in Khan? There were, I think,
There was one
3
division.
regiments.
Yeah, it was one division in this
One
entire
division.
sector.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus
Okay,
21st
so-
Panzer when it came in. So yeah, it makes sense that division got really well beat up because it's facing 4 or 5 divisions. But the Germans elsewhere are actually pretty healthy. Especially north of here, that now that they're breaking through Isigny, and forcing the paratroopers back to the Veer, they're going to be able to start shifting elements of the 243rd Infantry Division down south along the river. And guess what the first spot they're going to hit is on their way down? It's going to be here. So I don't think that just the fact that there are paratroopers here means that this is all she wrote. You know, I think that it's an open question still.
Okay, that makes sense. So.
I think it's also once the Germans over in the Khan sector realize that they're in trouble, where they're going to go.
Mm.
You know, as the first day ticks down and morning of the second day comes, and you know, not just this great big counterattack, but where if the Khan, how many? There were 2 divisions over there, right?
3, including 21st Panzer, but of course 21st Panzer is now entirely here. So and 243rd was actually shifting a fair amount of its elements west towards kind of the area just north of here.
Yeah, but I mean, if they march through this map and then hit just north of here, that's
right.
all those Americans that are massing over by Isigny.
Right.
So if that's where the counterattack happens, I mean, that could put the Americans in quite a bit of trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just had another thought, which is more of like a point to players, and I can't really illustrate it with an example because it's more a lack of something. There was not a lot of call for fires in this game. There were very few naval bombardment requests. Use your assets that you have available to you.
I think playing devil's advocate here, you know, I was really unhappy with the way I ended up having naval fires be implemented because, you know, it's just, it was just kind of do whatever's reasonable, you know, instead of...
Yeah.
And so if you're a battalion commander or a regiment commander, you know, on D-Day, you have your radio man. He's got, you know, his radio set actually with the, you know, numbers written down to tune into the frequencies to call out individual destroyers that have been tasked to help that sector of the beach or whatnot, you know. And so when you don't think about it if you don't have a list of available assets, right? It's not something that you might be thinking about. So to the defense of the, you know, Allied commanders, right? They, you know, it might slip their mind just because they don't actually have any concrete data on what assets they can call upon, you know?
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, naval fires seem to be something that went from regiment up to corps level before it actually got implemented. They'd ask their corps commander to call in naval fires or air support.
I think naval fire was something that was used, maybe not in this sector so much, but definitely in the Carentan
Yes.
area. Certainly around Isigny,
Yeah.
there
lot
toward
of
the
work.
end at Cherbourg, they were using
Yep.
quite a bit of it.
Effectively, I might add. It probably helped them push the German counterattack back in Isigny.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, if that hadn't, the naval gunfire on the city kept, I think, for about an hour, the Germans from advancing into that city.
The poor civilians, though. Oh,
Well,
rocked their world. But yeah. Yeah, so certainly I think the Allies have established a pretty good beachhead, but I think it's, the onus is on the Germans at this point to turn this back into the 77-day grind that Normandy was historically. I don't think that it's... I think the Allies have the initiative and the Germans need to take that back, Whereas historically, after the first day or two with D-Day, the Allies lost the initiative somewhat. And the Germans were able to kind of contain it. But at the moment, it doesn't seem like the Germans are prepared to make that happen right now.
Well,
yeah.
And I think part of that, I think this has been mentioned before, but it's just trying to model these things. That Normandy was fairly defensive, like lots of hedges.
Yep.
It wasn't like an open plain that's easy to attack across, and just trying to model it on this level, it's really hard to implement. I mean, I guess we could
Yes.
have done a -2 or something in certain areas, but I mean, regardless of player actions,
And the maps aren't
yeah.
perfect either.
Yeah.
A 1 to 100,000 scale map is probably not the best. In fact, it definitely isn't for an engagement like this. But then we would have had to use like 6 or 7 maps. And
God.
back then we didn't have a guy like Tunis who was able to throw all that stuff together into one module instead of having it be across 4 separate modules,
Yeah. Next time.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of stuff we can do better for sure. Yeah. With
Well, and it's
modeling
just
and
the
terrain.
nature of Kriegsspiel.
Yeah.
I think you're not gonna really get an accurate simulation of what it would actually be like on a platoon level, trying to clear hedges.
Of course not. Yeah. Yeah. If I had more time and wasn't already busy with other projects, I would definitely try and revisit this with like a more abstracted method. Or if I was gonna do a smaller scale thing, I'd restrict the scenario to something smaller. Like the 101st attack on Carentan, day 2 and 3. Or something like that, as opposed to trying to do all of D-Day. But yeah, no, I think that there's... I definitely think, and unless you guys have anything else to add, I think I can close with this. This D-Day game is definitely not like... This is not the last D-Day game the IKS is going to do, that's for sure. I think that there's so much to explore here, and that there were so many problems with this scenario that future umpires and players can try and rectify in their attempts to recreate it, or at least parts of it. And so, definitely, this is not the end-all, be-all D-Day game for the IKS. Maybe it's the biggest, but that came with its whole host of problems, as we already mentioned.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would drop the gauntlet here to any prospective umpires, either currently in the community or in the community years from now, who are thinking of running a D-Day game. I would drop the gauntlet and say, go ahead, let's do it. Let's see where we can improve, because there certainly is room to improve here, and a lot of it. So
Let's get a 200 player D-Day game next time.
No. No.
Yeah, as long as I'm not running it, I don't care. Oh man, I will never do something like this again.
Oh, we all know that's not true.
Aren't you doing a Battle of France?
Yeah.
That's in this level.
I'm gonna get a message in 3 days. Hey, do you want to do 101st attack on Carentan?
Oh my gosh. My reputation as the mad scientist might never ever go away.
Well, I think this brings up a good question of, like, what's the value, or how is this such a big game like this different from a smaller 10v10 or 12v12 game?
Yeah, the thing I wanted to explore, and I think in that regard, in this very specific instance, I think this was a resounding success. What I wanted to see was the relationship between upper echelon command and lower level commands, especially in the planning phase, but also in the action phase. I wanted to see kind of how that game of telephone plays out, right? And so it was very interesting for me to look at the reports that we were seeing of the players who were regiment commanders versus what Ike thought was happening. Or how Ike draws a line on a map that's really fat and wide and says, go take X spot, and then how that translates into a battalion level attack executed and planned by a regimental commander, I think that was what I wanted to see, and definitely saw it, but perhaps there was a better way for me to make my life easier and still get that effect. But yeah, anyhow, that's kind of what I wanted. That was the goal, and I think we saw it, but was it worth the price? That'll be up to you guys to decide.
I don't know. Was it, Carter?
Yeah.
Have you learned anything?
Have I learned anything? I've learned about the classic problem of pleonexia, or overstretching, and how it takes down the greatest of empires, or even the greatest of umpires.
Well, just speaking about the size of the game, I mean, it was difficult to umpire at times. I thought, for the most part, we did a good job, us as a team, but there's always room for improvement, of course. But I think just for me, it kind of drives home that, like, if you want to set up a good game, we can have a giant game like this, which is fun for people, but it's not, like, better in any sense of the word than, like, a smaller game with 4 versus 4 players that's done really well.
Yeah, it's not like this game has more merit than a standard Open Saturday game, for sure. Yeah, it's just different. There's something a little bit new, but it's not necessarily better. Yeah. In fact, some people might say it's worse just because the reports tend to come out slower, and they might be less detailed than you might be used to or would like to see, because that umpire has to write 20 reports that night, and whatnot.
Well, it's definitely quantity over quality. Not that this game didn't have quality. I think this is the perfect example of being able to strive for both and having some measure of both, but the quantity was certainly high and the quality could have been higher if there were 50 players instead of 100.
Yeah. Indeed.
Or twice as many umpires.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we we had like 10 people with the umpire role, but only 5 ever showed up on a regular basis. So,
and people came and go.
Yeah.
I mean, Crises did a lot in the beginning.
Yes.
And then
invaluable
other stuff, and yeah.
Yeah, he really helped with the initial paratrooper drops and all that. No, that was great. His help was awesome. And him running the first few updates of the West Cotentin sector, that really helped out too.
Is it time to open up all the channels now?
Well,
I'm excited for this.
Yeah, let me wrap up this recording.
Yeah. Should we clean up the umpire chat before? so the players don't see us calling them out.
I'm still recording.
I don't care.
Only you people knew
Eat
what
my
we said
ass.
about him.
I think we leave it unfiltered and uncensored. I believe in total transparency. Because I think if we said something mean about the players, they deserve to hear it. And if they say, "Hey, that was unfair," we'll be like, "No, I think we were actually right." You know.
Yeah,
No,
total transparency, except for the time that I posted the password to the session in the announcements channel.
Right.
Nice.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That was embarrassing, wasn't it?
Yes.
Well, anyway, I'll quickly run out the stream here, and I will get to helping you open up all the channels. So thank you, everyone, for watching, listening, playing. Some of you might have even helped umpire at certain points. Very fun game to run, and I look forward to seeing what people can come up with for D-Day scenarios, either the whole of it or part of it, or just other scenarios in general that are kind of this scale or this ambitious in either quantity or quality. So let's keep pushing the envelope together, and looking forward to seeing what kind of games the IKS runs in the future. So thank you guys, and I will see you next time.